In this video, I'm going to be breaking down some of our subscribers' laps so they and you can learn to be faster in the sim. Okay, so here we are on board an LMP2 car at Daytona. Oh, we've got the nice telemetry at the bottom of the screen. Oh, bit of oversteer there, that would have cost him some time. A little bit hard on the accelerator, had to have a big lift coming out. Now I'm looking at the braking trace. Little bit lumpy there. If you look in the bottom left of the screen, when you release the brake, it was a little bit lumpy coming out. Again, we've got a bit of rotation on the exit of the corner there. Quickly into this bit. Let's watch the brake trace going into the hairpin. Yeah, there. So just before the last bit, he's coming off the brakes too quickly, and that will be disrupting the car, not giving it the maximum grip. Watch again on the brakes. There's a little release, and then he keeps it on. So that bit where he releases 3/4 of the way through the braking, it's just a little bit too much. A little bit ragged here from this driver, and again, that's reflected when they're getting on the accelerator. It's a little bit aggressive. There's a little bit too much action going on here. Down the straight and into the quick chicane, let's have a look at the pedal work. So looking at the telemetry in the bottom corner of the screen. Again, a little bit of a lump in the brake release there. Lines are pretty good. Steering looks okay, apart from when the car's a little bit too loose coming on the exit. So my biggest tips for this driver is just to take things back a step. And a lot of time this happens in the real world and in sim racing actually, where you're pushing, you're trying to go as fast as you possibly can go. And that is important. But if you find yourself making the car work too hard, lots of steering inputs, lots of action going on. When we looked at Max Verstappen's video in a previous video, you can see he's super smooth. There's very minimal steering going on. The car is floating through the corner. And this wasn't just happening with this driver. He was pushing the car a little bit too hard. In terms of precise technique, the most important thing that this driver can focus on is a smooth release of the brake. He was getting on the brake pressure really well and maintaining that, and then he was bleeding off, but then there was a point about 3/4 of the way through the braking zone where it came down very quickly, and that will release the front of the car up a little bit more quickly than you want and unload those front tyres, and that makes the car difficult to handle. So a little bit less aggression, a little bit smoother with the brake release, and this driver will find a good bit of time. So here we are at Summit Point in the trusty old Mazda, one of my favourite cars on iRacing. Fantastic car to learn in, and the car that we use for our training programs at Driver61 Sim Racing. So let's see how this driver gets on. Jeffrey. On the brakes to the maximum capacity there, meaning that the Mazda will be into the ABS, which is a less efficient way to brake. So release those brakes just a little bit to save going into the ABS. Again, we're looking at the pedal work. Look at the green and the red display. Pretty good entry there, missed the apex a little bit, but you can see he's controlling the car, making the car roll as he enters the corner. Pretty good there. Down the rest, this is a tricky part of the track, gets the nose in. Again, a bit hard on the brakes, and maintaining that high brake pressure going into the braking zone isn't the most efficient way to do it. If you're in the ABS in this car, when you turn the car in, it's going to really disrupt the dynamics of the car. It might cause some understeer, or it potentially could cause some oversteer as well. Tricky through this section, bit of understeer here on the exit. Oh, which just he managed to keep the throttle in there, but it might have cost him a little bit of time because the car was loaded up in a bit of a strange way. Into the final corner. I'm going to watch that back, washed out on the exit there. Let's just watch that final corner back in slow motion, because I think it's quite important. So if you just slow it down to half speed, and this is what you should do with your laps as well, just so you can really see what's going on. And we're looking at the pedal work here. So bottom left-hand corner, there's a throttle on the brakes, very hard and very sharp. And then he's going into the corner. What he would be better off doing here, because when you brake and lift off very quickly, the front of the car is going through a lot of work. It goes through a lot of movement, stamp on the brakes and come back off again. And that means it's very difficult to judge exactly where the front of the car is when you turn the car into the corner. So if you imagine the brake trace, it spikes and then comes back down very quickly. What we actually want to do is probably brake a little bit earlier, but a little bit softer. probably 50% or even 40% of the full brake pressure that we're seeing there, but extend that over a little bit more time. Therefore, we get less weight transfer, it's less spiky, it's easier to control, it's easier to be close to the limit all the way through that corner, and we can trail those brakes in deeper into the corner and maintain the control over the front of the car. When you have this big spike in the brake pressure, especially in a corner that you don't need to decelerate very much for, like this last one at Summit Point, you make the car very difficult to control, and we don't want that. We want to make the car as easy to control, as easy to get right on the limit as we possibly can. So here we are in an M4 GT3 at the Nurburgring, into the final corner. A bit of understeer there, or a lot of understeer on the exit coming out there. Had to wait ages to get back on the accelerator. Coming down to the first corner, always a tricky one to spot the braking zone. So let's watch the pedal work again. And then we'll watch the steering. So he moves across on the brakes. Decent braking there. Good trail braking, he carried it in. Car looks pretty well balanced, getting it back over to the right as quickly as he can. Nice smooth lift. Notice how smooth this driver is on releasing the throttle. Often we see drivers just banging off the accelerator pedal. That shifts the weight to the front too quickly. This driver's nice and smooth. And again, very patient. A little bit of oversteer on the exit there, but you can see he's pretty refined in all his inputs. A little bit of an overlay there with the throttle and the brake, but again, nice and smooth. Very, very careful. Bit of understeer there at the apex. Coming down to the hairpin. Absolutely flat out. Hitting all his gear changes well. Overlaying the brakes again a little bit much there. That point he got off the brakes a little bit too quick. If you just watch that back, the last little bit of braking, it came off too quick and the car began to understeer. Here, and then he gets some understeer, and then he's waiting to get on the throttle for a long time. So you can see there how important the trail braking, that tiny little bit of brake pressure is to keep into the corners, to get the front of the car hooked up and turned in. And if you don't do that, you get this understeer, especially in a GT car, and then you have to wait for a long time before you can get back on the accelerator. So that's what rotation is. You want to keep the trail braking in, keep a little bit of light pressure on the front of the car, so you can get the car rotated, and then you can get on the accelerator a bit more aggressively and a bit earlier to propel the car down the next straight. So back into it, coming up to the chicane here. Very smooth, really smooth, especially with how he's coming off the brakes. Good driving here, and you have to be even more smooth in a GT car because it's big, heavy, and if you're too aggressive on the pedals, then it's going to cause a lot of weight transfer in the car, causing it to be unsettled. Really patient around here. Good driving, using all the roads, so his vision's good. He's looking up at that next apex, looking through the corner, coming up to the tight chicane now towards the end of the lap. Let's see how he attacks the curbs. Good braking there, getting it slowed down, getting it turned in. Just using the first part of the curbs and then the second part of the curbs on the second part. Nurburgring is great for technique because there's lots of long corners like this last one where you've just got to wait and be patient. Got the car to turn there. That was a good example of trail braking. So you could see there that the car was pretty well balanced in the middle part of the corner. He got the rotation just about right. Rotation is when the rear of the car is coming around, but not so much that you have to put correction into the car. You don't put any opposite lock into the car. So you can see that he was just waiting for it to settle down, and then he got on the accelerator. The car wasn't understeering, it wasn't adding steering angle into the car at the mid corner. He was just rotating nicely, and then he was able to get a good exit coming out of the corner. So all in all, this was a great lap from this driver. If you want to learn more about how to be quick in the simulator, check out these other videos which we think you'll love. Cheers, and I'll see you next time.